to BeamNG, and we're going to be continuing through the story of Phompsonby, and we're going to be condensing several decades into one with this episode because I haven't built that many vehicles in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s, even for Phompsonby. So we're going to be a bit sparse here, and that's purely down to the fact that I don't build in this era. So we're going to be condensing everything up until the millennium, basically, into this episode. But we will continue to go through year by year, as it were, or decade by decade, I should say. And we're going to be starting with this, which is the 1965 Phompsonby Petite, which is a little hot hatchback, as you can see, with the Phompsonby rear lettering. As we transition to this sort of era of Phompsonby, I should say. Obviously, rear badge, front badge, still keeping the bonnet ornament, and we do have a little inline 3 engine in here, and well, you know, it's a relatively decent little hatchback. Obviously, if I was doing the gears manually, perhaps we would have got a bit of a better start there, but as you can see, relatively fast accelerating, and top speed isn't bad either. Seating 2 comfortably, 4 if you squish a couple of people in the back. You know, decent boot space, and yeah, in general, just a decent enough, just a sort of decent enough hatchback. I think it has 3 or 4 gears, something along those lines. So yeah, it's not too bad of a vehicle, in my opinion. Did decently well. The boy racers and the like enjoyed picking up themselves a petite, based kind of on the old Mini, you know, the sort of first generations of minis as they came out. And I don't mean minis as in microcars. I mean mini as in, you know, the car Mini. That's not a ramp. I thought that was a big ramp. It wasn't. It was in fact. It was in fact a massive wall. Hey, it still drives though. And it looks so derpy. Why does it look like that? Why is it so squished? But anyway, so that is the Petite. And we're going to be moving up now to the 70s, which you'll notice there wasn't a race car for the 60s because the racing division still wasn't up yet. The racing division was still having time off to develop new things and get back into some proper racing, because obviously bank track racing was no longer a thing, particularly post-war Britain. So, you know, the racing division kind of had to figure out what to do. So yeah, while the racing division was struggling to, you know, turn themselves into a non-banked track racing team, Phompsonby was continuing with a vehicle such as this, which is the Delta. As you can see, Phompsonby logoing on the back, writing at least there's the Delta, naming there. The front is not the greatest, I will give you that, and well, this is part of the reason why I don't build in these eras. Particularly because modern cars, even you know, neo-modern, not neo-modern, but you know, older modern, you know, 70s, 80s, 90s car designs, at least the fronting, I'm not particularly the greatest at. But the Delta is, you know, your saloon replacement for the Atolia, although there would be something before the Atolia, so or sorry, something after the Atolia, and between this, probably at least 2 vehicles probably would have been between the Atolia and this. But it's got yourself an inline 4, I think, in there. Inline 3 or inline 4, probably an inline 4. Massive old boot space at the rear, plenty of seating for people inside. In general, decent enough vehicle. Didn't do particularly the greatest. I have noticed that I have lost. I have not put wing mirrors on this, which, whoops, probably should have done that. But yeah, I think this is based on a Citroen chassis that I found on the automation workshop. So yeah, I just like the covered rear wheel design. But yeah, in general, not too bad of a car. As you can see, we're reaching 174 is the maximum top speed of this thing. Are we going to land it? Not particularly. Radiator damaged and starved of oil. But it still drives. Look at that. Handling has not been compromised by losing a wheel. That's just the Phompsonby build quality that everybody knows and loves. So, yeah, that is the Delta. Not too bad of a car. The front end is definitely, well, not very good. I'll give you that much. But we are, however, going to move on to another 70s vehicle. And the 70s vehicle that we're going to be looking at is an off-roader. Phompsonby hasn't particularly done off-roaders all that much. So, this vehicle is kind of familiar looking, I'd imagine. It's relatively familiar looking because it's very much a sort of Land Rover-y looking design. It's very much a Land Rover body, and Phompsonby up until this point hasn't really done off-roaders unless you want to count, you know, the vans and whatnot. So, yeah, it's a big off-roader. We've got, you know, side skirts, the rear bumper there. You know, it's a 4x4 V6, the overhauler. Very impressive, with a rear spare tyre, I should say. There you go. It has got a turbocharger, 2 turbochargers, in fact, as you can see there. Built for torque, designed for torque. Very big old Land Rover design. Massive industrial strength hinges on the doors and things. Very big lights. We've obviously got front badging because, you know, we can fit it on there, and, you know, Land Rovers have front badging on there. We do, of course, have the rear badging on there as well. Lettering, I should say. And, naturally, we have got the bonnet ornament, but it is a very big, large off-road vehicle designed very much for going, well, off-road. It's got very large suspension. If we reset it and take it over here, hopefully, providing it doesn't let me down, we should be able to see it. Spare jerry can for fuel, non-standard, that's an added extra. But, if we brake, and if I take you up this bumpiness right here, we will hopefully see some of what makes the, oh dear, Overlander particularly good. It has got a lot of power, unrealistically so, but, you know, off-road tyres, off-road suspension, absolutely no problems whatsoever with going over the bumps and things. Oh dear, oh dear. There you go. Can we make it up there? Not quite. But, you know, it's a big off-roader. You know, perfect for the off-roading crowd. And yeah, in general, just not particularly bad. Not particularly bad vehicle for anyone who wanted it. And I'll say it now while I remember. If there is a demand for it or a request for it from a bunch of people, I will make a sort of Google Drive and put all of these zip files in there for you to play around yourself with them, and maybe I'll eventually get around to uploading them to, you know, the BeamNG actual repository and stuff like that. But that is the overhauler. Now, the car that I do want to show though is another 70s car, and this car is the Elematic. It's a very nice car, at least in my opinion. It's yeah, a sports car, as you can tell, based on I believe a concept car chassis that again I found on the Automation Workshop. Pop-up headlights, obviously front badge, front bonnet ornament, big old rear lettering on there, and it's got a Boxer 4. I was going to say Boxer 6, but that looks like a Boxer 4 engine. It looks to be. And the whole point of the Elematic was to be particularly lightweight. So, it's rather quiet, but it does sound particularly nice, in my opinion. And the whole point of this thing was to be incredibly light when I was building it in automation, so the body's made of fiberglass. As much of it is made out of lightweight things such as aluminium, as much as I could. And, yeah, oh, lost a wing mirror there. But it's particularly fast. It's got 200 and something horsepower, 287 I think horsepower, something like that. And it weighs, according to automation, 884 kilograms. So, yeah, very, very lightweight. Nice and fast, nice and quick to accelerate. And in general, I think this is probably one of the best designs I've done. Looks-wise, I think it's perfectly adequate. One singular big windscreen wiper for the front windscreen. We don't have any for the rear, unfortunately, but we do have this six exhaust on the back there. And yeah, you know, who doesn't like some pop-up headlights? Let's try and avoid the water. We did not, in fact, avoid the water. Oh dear, oh dear. There goes our fiberglass chassis. Or body panelling, I should say. But yeah, that is the Elematic. It's yeah, a nice fast. There you go. It is a nice fast sports car. Did well. You know, it's the Elematic. It's a pretty nice car. Sounds nice, looks nice, drives nice. What more could you want, really? It is rather wide, but beyond that, yeah, it's a pretty decent car. And I think that's actually it for what I've got from the between the 60s to 90s, I'm going to be honest, if I'm looking here at the list of cars as we scroll down, which means it's time for a return of the racing division. And we'll start with the Le Mans Special, which is the first car that the racing team had when they sprang back following the post-war era. So this is it. This is the Mark 1 technically, although it wasn't called the Mark 1 at this point. It was just the Le Mans Special. So here's how it looks. Looks pretty nice. This was a modded body at the time. I think it's now actually in the game by default. But this is it. It's got a Boxer 6 engine, I do believe. Yeah, mounted transversely rather than longitudinally in order to fit it in. But yeah, we've gone with a number 6 numbering instead of the number 8 of the old vehicles, I think. If we just have a look at something like the old Power Max, we'll soon be able to see. There's 25, and then it went to 8. Okay, interesting. 25, down to 8 for the Phoenix, probably due to me getting it wrong. But anyway, this is the Le Mans Special, based on I think this is a Lotus chassis? Question mark. I'm not too sure, but we're a bit wobbly as we set off there. But you know, the Boxer 6s sound decent. No turbocharger in this one, so this is pure intake air. But yeah, nice and fast. Obviously, we've got the sort of Aston Martin style wheels. Oh, we did until the 2 of them went flying off. 3 of them went flying off. But yeah, we've got the old spindly wire wheels with the nice air cutting discs on the side, for want of a better word. But yeah, this was the first of the models for the racing division, and you know, it did perfectly fine, perfectly decent enough to warrant a second revision to the vehicle with its twin exhausts. So well, there goes my wheels again, and the engine. Oh dear, oh dear. But it's a good thing that we have got the Mark II. So what happens with the Mark II? Not all too much, because it's from 1965. So it's going to retain the Boxer 6 engine. So the Mark I came in 1960, I think it was 60 or 60. 61, 62, it was early 60s. So this obviously came to 65, and I believe there's no turbo on this thing yet either. It's mounted longitudinally this way, in this configuration. Mark II, as you can see there, still retaining our number 6 numbering, obviously retaining the same chassis shape and everything. This is kind of the hallmark of the Le Mans specials. They retain this body shape. More cooling, more induction cooling, and various other bits and pieces. I believe the engine has been tweaked to be a little bit more powerful, give it a bit more acceleration. We do have an extra pair of exhausts on the back there. We do have our twin exhausts. We're retaining the circular, circular rear lights and everything, and obviously keeping the Phompsonby lettering on the back, with the lettering on the front as well as the bonnet ornament, which, bonnet ornament probably not the best for aerodynamics, but we've got to give the competitors some sort of chance against us, don't we? So, yeah. Off-roading is definitely not this thing's strong point, as you can see. Yep, there we've lost all of our under trains and everything, and I think we've also suffered a puncture there by the looks of it. Yeah, that's most definitely a puncture. So, yeah, not the greatest at off-roading here, but on asphalt and racetrack, the Le Mans Special Mark II is a perfectly worthy upgrade to the old Mark I, and we're also not going with namings for these vehicles. They are simply Le Mans Special 1, Mark I, Mark II, Mark III, Mark IV. So gone are the days of things like the Powermax and the Green Arrow and all of those fancy silly names. So we're now going to be going to the Mark III, and you'll not believe it, it looks pretty much the same as the Mark II. I clicked on the wrong thing there. There it is. It looks relatively similar to the Mark II, strikingly so, some people would say. So here we go. We've changed up the lighting. We've instead gone with nuclear sort of looking rear lights. We'll say that it's because of a protest to the increased nuclear. Increased nuclear spending of the Soviets and the Americans. We can say it's a protesting measure, yes. But yeah, once again, I do not believe it's got a turbo on this thing. It's again a Boxer 6 engine, and of course we're keeping with the quadruple exhaust. And we're keeping with the same wheels and everything as well. It is very much just a minor tweak and revision to the old Mark II. There's the Mark III badging so that you can see. And otherwise it's very similar. Very, very similar to, oh dear, the Mark II, including the fact that the wheel comes off at any the wheels come off at any slight inconvenience. So yeah, there goes my wheels once again. But we do of course have our fog lights and everything on there, because after all this is the Le Mans 24 hours race, so kind of need lights in order to see. But yeah, so that is the Mark III. Nothing too outrageous or crazy in terms of changes, just extra extra power and some extra lightweight saving measures and whatnot, bits and bobs. There's not really all too much you can do with a race car in automation when you're upgrading it every couple of years. However, the Mark IV. The Mark IV is where everything changed. We went back to the old circular lights. We're of course retaining the badges. There's the Mark IV. We've also gone with 2 dump exhausts instead of the quadruple two-paired exhaust. We've also, for extra streamlining and extra speed, the lights are now actually covered, whereas the Mark 1, 2 and 3, they were open circulars. this time they've now actually been covered to give it more of a streamlining edge. Air isn't being trapped in the hole left by the headlight. And we have now got a turbocharger. There it is. 2 turbochargers actually by the looks of it, so it's twin turbo. And that gives it a lot more power. Well, not a lot more power, I tuned it down so that I would still have room to tune more. But yeah, it means it is faster, accelerates quicker, more streamlined for extra speed. We've got a bigger rear wing, and as you can see, it flies pretty high up that ramp. As we then come down, the wheels even stayed on. Would you look at that? We fixed the wheel issue. And the main engine is, of course, broken. But yeah, so that is the Mark IV coming to the 70s, I believe this is. This is like a 70 or 71, I think, maybe. So yeah, 70 or 71, Phompsonby upgraded to turbochargers for the Le Mans specials. And, you know, it gives us extra power, gives us extra speed, allows us to power slide like that, which was very impressive for me. Doing this on a mouse and keyboard, by the way. I don't actually have a controller hooked up to these things. But yeah, that is the Mark IV Le Mans Special. And I'm afraid that's the only one I have, or sorry, the last one I have, because at this point automation got an update and I stopped building automation for a while, and that meant that I stopped making Le Mans specials and stopped making anything for the most part, which is also part of the reason why we don't have any more for this era of Phompsonby. But that is where I'm going to leave it for today. I'm going to be leaving it here with the Le Mans special, and we're going to be leaving the 1900s, well, you know, 1900 to 1999. We're going to be leaving it here because we're moving into the 21st century and we're moving into modern Phompsonby, which will be the last of these sort of history episodes, I suppose you could say, for Phompsonby, because we're now going to be moving into modern Phompsonby and what modern Phompsonby are doing, which means, yeah, I don't actually have anything for the 80s or 90s, I believe, here for Phompsonby. So, yeah, everything else on this list that we haven't yet looked at, we will look at next episode. So, once again, if there is a desire for it from people, I will I will make a sort of Google Drive and upload these zip files for all of these vehicles that you see in there if people want them, and eventually I'll maybe get around to uploading them to the repository, BeamNG repository. But yeah, for now, I will thank you all for watching, and goodbye.